Morning, church. This is a different type of role. I'm not with the children today. But I am standing here representing all children who have parents, right? Okay, so end it now. I know every year when it comes to this day, we're always thinking, we're talking about women, we're talking about abuse, because it's usually a women's ministry event. And yet, we find that as women, because we are so central to everyone's lives, we are concerned about all types of abuse. And in many cases, when it comes to taking care of parents, it's something that tends to fall on women. And this is why it tends to fall under our sort of umbrella. So today we are looking at abuse of the elderly. And this presentation is from the GC, and it is one that was done in 2007. So those who are senior, surely you must remember this presentation. There have been a few additions, but the bulk of it is mostly the same. Okay, I do have this here. Okay. So, a story is told. A son says to his parents, "Mom, Dad, you know what? It's been good being your child, but I've decided that I'm not going to take care of you, right? I'm going to take all that money that I have, all that money I'm getting every month, all my savings, and I'm going to take them to the church because Pastor Vez needs it for the new project at church, right? Because I'm giving it to God's work. God will bless me, God will bless you, He'll provide for you. After all, God has promised He'll provide for His righteous people, right? What are your thoughts on that? And I'd ask that we have some roving mics because we want to have as much interaction as possible. So, parents, if your beloved son or daughter came and told you this statement, what would your first reaction be? No reactions. Okay, so we are fine with this happening? Okay, Kunda has a response. He's shaking his head. So no one has anything to say about this. This is fine. No. Why not? You would never do that to Sis Nancy, right?
No.
No.
No, I wouldn't.
Sis Nancy, hold him to it.
Yeah. No, because it's like, well, they're giving it to the church, right? So, and they're saying it's for God's work. Isn't caring for people already God's work, though?
Thank you, Kunda. That is such a mature response, right? Caring for people is God's work, right? And I'm so glad we actually got a young person answering this, right? It shows that our young people actually do understand what their responsibilities actually are. And God addresses this particular issue in Mark 7, verse 5 to 13. Jesus was having a conversation about this. So back then, there was this tradition called Korban, where someone could come to the church and decide, no, I'm giving all my money to the church, so parents, you take care of yourselves. And what Jesus says in response to this is quite profound. He says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away from me. In vain they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Right? Our society today, how does it treat those who are older? What sort of attitudes do we have? Okay? The verse said, honor your father and your mother only if they have been good to you. That's what the verse said, right? It said, honor your father and mother only if they have taken you to the best schools. Only if they have provided all that you ever wanted them to give you. No. The commandment is very straightforward. Honor your father and mother. And it doesn't put any conditions to that, right? That honor is supposed to be theirs. It's a God-given right. And when we want to substitute these sort of things for our own thinking, for our own teachings, or for the current trends, you know, how many people do we see who cut off their parents or decide, I'm not talking to you anymore, I'm not dealing with you anymore, right? These are the sort of things that we experience. And yes, self-care is very important. But what God expects from us always has to be a priority. And Jesus exposed the Pharisees because they were the ones who were accepting this korban. And he says they were being self-centered and they had no love for the people that they were serving. So they could actually excuse people from a God-given responsibility so that this money could come into the church's coffers. And God refers to this as honoring him with our lips and not with our hearts. So the commandment is there. I was just curious why everyone kept laughing. Is there a reason why the order is father and mother? Does it matter if it's mother and father? Does it matter? Why does it matter?
It matters because God made Adam before Eve. And what God sanctified, we should also.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
The man is usually seen as the leader in the house. Like it says, the wife should submit to the man. So I think that's another reason why we should honor father and then mother. Yeah.
Okay. So our fathers, our male role models there, they have a God-given responsibility as the heads of the home. We have another answer at the back.
The woman was brought forth out of the man, and it follows with the father and the son. So you have that illustration being there, that the man is first, and all that was provided for the man, and that's why God is referred to as the father. So, and that's why we have to honor. We can't put the last 6 laws, is it, before the first 4? No, last 5 before the first 4. We've got to get the first 4 right. So honoring our Father in heaven, and then we have that love to be able to shower on everyone else.
Well, thank you for that analogy. All right, so we honor. It doesn't mean that you honor your mother any less because she comes later in that verse, right? In honoring our fathers, we learn to also honor our mothers, right? We honor our parental figures. So I want to ask a couple of questions here. Okay. As we can see for the AMPC version, it says, regard your father and mother. And that term regard means treat with honor, due obedience, and courtesy, your father and mother. The question I'm going to ask now, especially, okay, all of us are children here, actually, what am I saying? Who is your father and who is your mother? When the verse says, honor your father and mother, okay, we've got, you don't have a mic? Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, my father and my mother is anyone who is older than me. In this church, I've got my mom, like my mom, Bessie, and everyone who is older than me, I'll treat them like my mom. My mom, I treat them like my mom and my dad, as in honoring them. And the respect that I give to my biological mother, biological father, that's the honor I need to give them.
Okay, so this verse doesn't just address those who are biological to us, right? We have a responsibility to honor all those who are older than we are, right? Treat them with respect, treat them with dignity. I want to ask young people, how old is an old person? If you look at someone and say, that person is old, how old must they be? 60? Okay, I'm still young. Thank you for that one. All right. Any other ages? So from 60, do we agree our elderly are from the age of 60? 50? Okay, Favor says 50. Any other numbers? What do you think? Who counts as a senior person, like, when we really talk about it? Let me give a silly example. If I'm in the bus, right? I mean, obviously in the bus, when we were growing up, you didn't sit down when an adult was standing, right? I don't see that much these days, right? I've been on several buses. I've never really seen anyone giving their seat to an older person. But at what age do you start giving people a seat? Girls, what age do you give people a seat in the bus? Sean, you've got an answer.
I would say when someone older is less able than me.
Okay. So if I look less able than you, you would give me a seat on the bus. Okay? And if they are just older, they're just old, like let's look at Mama Francis over there. She's less able? Okay. All right. So we have this responsibility to honor not just our family, let me put it that way, but anyone that we find around us who is older and many times maybe less able than we are. So God expects us to treat them with love, with dignity, with respect. Okay. So our topic today is abuse of the elderly. Right? And this is a growing concern in the world today. And it's not just based in one particular place or one ethnicity or race or country or anything like that. It is becoming a global sort of problem. And so it is a problem that stretches across boundaries. And so usually we share on child abuse, domestic violence in the home, like men, women, all those sort of things. And there's become a growing need to talk more about the abuse of the elderly. Right. So, did you know that there is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day? Did you know that? World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Do you know what date it's on? Okay. So if I ask you when is Mother's Day, all of you know. When is Father's Day, all of you know. We have a special day for abuse awareness, elder abuse awareness. And that is on the 15th of June. So every year on the 15th of June, we are, I don't know whether to say we are celebrating, but there's awareness of elder abuse. Okay. So this is a serious problem. Okay. So Solomon says to his son, listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Right? And the Message Bible paraphrases it to say, listen with respect to the father who raised you, and when your mother grows old, do not neglect her. So many times when we grow older, we have our own opinions, right? You get married, you've got your own family, and you have a certain way of doing things. I liked what Aunt Bessie said. She said her mom died at 97, and no matter how her mother shouted at her or did whatever to her, she still showed that love and respect for her. You know, I remember my grandmother, she died 2 years ago. She was my last grandparent. And even my older uncles, if you just got on her last nerve, she would take a wooden spoon. She was so quick with that. And it was so amazing to us, that, these older uncles that we're looking at could still be spanked by my grandmother. But that's what loving and honoring our parents is about. We realize that they still have a responsibility for us, even in our older age. Okay. So, what is abuse of the elderly? What sort of things do you think count as abuse toward the elderly? Do you have any examples? I don't want to share the list I have. I want to hear what sort of abuse you think the elderly actually face. Any ideas? Neglect. Okay, that is a definite one. Neglect. Anything else? Verbal abuse. Okay, we all know what verbal abuse is, right? Where you're always saying aggressive words or mean words to people. Anything else? Financial abuse. Okay? It might just be that you are withholding even the money that is theirs. You know, some people, they go and withdraw their parents' pension and they keep it for themselves. Things like that. Oh, you don't just provide for your grandparents or your parents at all. Any other abuse? Physical abuse. Some people actually use hands on other people, right? Domestic violence against the elderly. And it was interesting. I was reading one of the studies where they were saying before, when they were doing the census and they were talking about abuse, they would never ask the elderly questions about domestic abuse because they thought it was more of a younger people thing. But a lot of domestic abuse occurs against those who are aged. Any other form of abuse? Manipulation. All right. So more of your emotional abuse, where you want to strip someone of their identity and dignity. Okay. So these are the types of abuse. All right. So it can be a single or a repeated act. Right? And it tends to occur in a relationship where there is an expectation that there should be trust, or where someone is in a position of power. So it includes physical, emotional, verbal, financial. We even have sexual abuse of elderly people. I mean, if you read the news, you find all these things. At times, it's even spiritual abuse, right? Where people go and they manipulate all elderly people in the name of religion. You take away someone's entire savings and say, no, we're taking them to the church, we're using them for godly things, all these sort of things. And anything that is in violation of their rights counts as abuse. Okay. So, do you think this is something that happens within the home or outside the home? Where do you think abuse of elderly people is most prevalent? In the home, as in with family, or like in a residential home, in the hospital? Inside or out? Where do you think it's most prevalent? Inside, in our very homes. This is where this abuse is happening. Okay. So, as pointed out, neglect is also abuse. So this involves things like not doing things that you're supposed to be doing or providing for the older people. All right. Things like food, shelter, medication, even personal contact. All right. Think about that. Failing to even just call or message someone to check up on them. That's a form of neglect. Remember, they were young once. They would be able to go out, hang out with friends, do all these things. Now they are not so mobile anymore. Now they are more dependent on someone else. And when we leave them, we neglect them. I think it takes something so much bigger away from the soul when you're neglected and you're just lonely. And many older people actually experience more than one form of abuse and neglect. So, and the perpetrators can be children, a spouse, or even grandchildren. It can be friends, neighbors, care providers, landlords, or any person who's in a position of power. And it can take place in the home, in a residential care setting, or even in the community. Okay. So obviously, we are just talking in general here. How does the UK do in terms of this abuse? So we find that this was a study that was done by Hourglass in 2020. So these are 5 years old. Over 2.7 million older people are affected by abuse. And another study was saying that about 1 in 30 of older people aged between 60 to 74 have faced some form of abuse, and 1 in 50 of those who are older than 75. So you can see that this is something that is quite widespread. And those who mentioned financial, most abuse tends to be financial, right? Where you withhold things from older people. So Hourglass, they have a call center that they run. And if you want to look at these numbers, they said in 2018, they were getting about 4,000 calls. By 2023, they were getting 30,000 calls about elder abuse. So this is something that is really serious. In the space of 5 years, 7 times the number. Okay. And about 40% of abuse cases were actually against men. And most abuse, as I mentioned before, happens in the victim's own homes. So it's not outside the home, it's within the home. Now, moving on to Scotland. Okay. 5 to 9% of older people, I'm missing home there, living in their own home. okay, again in the victim's home, face at least one form of abuse. And when this particular study was done, most of the abuse was against women at about 75%. And those were the types of abuse that were noted. So psychological, physical, financial, institutional, neglect, and sexual assault. And about 80% of that abuse happened in victims' homes. So the rest would be like in your care homes or in the hospital. But 80% of that is within the home. So when we look at these numbers, I think it's worrying, right? Because all of us here, we are children, we are grandchildren, right? What is happening with the elderly in our own homes, in our own communities? When we look at these numbers, 5 to 9%, it's not a small number, right? That's a substantial number of people who are facing neglect or abuse at the hands of those who are supposed to love and care for them. And as individuals, as a church, as a community, we need to be able to do something about this or try to lessen the impact of such. So, what does God expect from us? Remember what we read in Mark chapter 7, the Corban story, all right? So, it is our duty, all right, as children, to take care of those who are older than us, especially when they're poor. I mean, think about it. When I think of my parents and all that they did to get me to where I am, it's a lot. And then when they're at an age when they need us to take care of them, we forget everything that came before that. So we have this huge responsibility to try and take care of them as far as is possible, or as far as we are able. Okay. So I was I was on some group and there was a discussion, right? So this family, this husband and wife, they had an agreement that no matter what, they will never stay with their parents. Okay? So, and everything went fine. They all agreed. Whatever happens, we send money wherever people are. And then it so happened that, the lady, when her father died, they took care of her mother, they in the rural home and everything else. And again, the same rule applied. Now, when the husband's father died, the mother unfortunately ended up in a serious crisis because now where they were staying, they couldn't afford to pay for the bills there. And now the option was to bring the mother to the home. And the wife's response was, but we had an agreement. We said we take care of our parents wherever they are. Okay. What are your thoughts on that sort of situation? What do you do?
Wife should bring her mother to the home, so everything will align.
So everyone brings their mother into the home.
Yeah, since it's like that, because it was an agreement. I mean, it's my opinion, and I'm giving it. So since they earlier agreed upon that, we'll take care of our parents everywhere, and due to some circumstances, as if it's life, and life is very unpredictable. But since it happened that the man has to bring his mother home, good. The wife has mother too. Should bring her home.
Okay. Okay, let me add some context, because when the mother died, she tried to get her mother to come home, and he was like, no, we had an agreement. No one comes home. And she was like, okay, fine. And she made do with whatever happened. So Favor says, bring them both home. What do we do? And Brenda, do you want to say something?
I'm thinking, is there a way they can look after her outside the home? Because I think what you don't want is for that parent to be neglected. I understand the rules, but at the end of the day, these are your parents. And I think your love and care and honoring your parents trumps anything. No matter what rules you make, you don't want your mother neglected. So if they can pay for her rent where she is, okay, fine, then let them do that. If the wife and the husband, if they have enough money, because that's the struggle right now, right?
Yeah.
That she's not able to meet her rental, So if they can pay for that while she's there, okay. If not, this is your parent. You cannot neglect her.
Okay, thank you. I think the lesson I got from that is at times we make rules that we should not be making in the first place. Right? And we need to be very careful. All right. Because now when you want to say, okay, let's be fair. All right. When it was my mom, you decided no. Now it's your mom. Why should we say yes? We create situations for ourselves. And so let us not create situations that will come and bite us later on. Like Brenda said, our parents are our parents. We have a responsibility to them, and we need to make sure that we prioritize that responsibility. Sean, you had something to say? It's not for me, right?
I understand. Like, what if like they made the rule because of like what they've been through before in their past? Because like I'm not saying this is what I agree with. I just like seeing things from all possible points of view. So like, say for instance, there was a child that grew up with their grandmother in the house all the time, and then there's not a lot of space in this small family in a big home. Maybe they grew up thinking it would be better for them to take care of their own parents, maybe like Auntie Brenda said, in their own house. Maybe they could pay for it rather than having their own parents in their house, so then they could have their own family in their house but still take care of their mother outside. Because like Brenda said, as long as you can pay for it, or if the government can help, there's lots of facilities that can help and look after people in places where you can't. It's just a question. It's not a statement or anything, really.
Okay? Sean, I totally get your question. And I think, yes, at times we might be pushed to put some rules in place because of prior circumstances. But again, do not put rules in place that end up stopping you from doing the right thing, so to speak. Right? Because obviously now this is becoming an issue because they don't have enough money to pay for her to be outside. And we have a rule, you can't come to our home. And it just complicates life. So do not ever take a decision and decide to die on a hill for some things. I think maybe that's it. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, it was in a group and it was an interesting discussion, the way people were looking at it. But these are the sort of situations that we can actually face. Okay. I am looking at the time, and I think let me rush through this presentation now. So a basic element of abuse of the elderly is disrespect and disregard for these older people. And we've got places where when people reach a certain age, we feel like they're useless. They don't really contribute much to society, right? I mean, a classical example. If two people were drowning at the same time, an older person, a young person, who would the lifeguard likely save? The younger person. Why? The older person has lived their life. They are done. We need to save this one who still has a future. Right? Might make some sense on some level, but the point is, we should never ever see anyone as having outlived their usefulness. All right. Our young people, I think, like the story that Kuda shared, they have so much to still share. They have so much to contribute. It might not be in the way of money or labor or anything like that, but the wisdom that they have, the things they have seen. There is nothing new under the sun. Most of us think like, oh, life is so different now. There is absolutely nothing new. And our older people have so much to contribute. And when we look beyond what we think they can contribute to what they actually have to offer, I feel like it would help us be happier and appreciate and really care for them more. So what does God expect from us? We are told to honor our parents, right? Stand in the presence of the aged. Show respect for the elderly and revere your God. I am the Lord. So we need to have this attitude of admiration, all right? Be thoughtful to them. Treat them well. Give them the care that is due to them, right? Just like they cared for you when you were younger, just like they gave you what they could when you were younger, right? We should still practice obedience, well, as far as is possible. Okay? Let me not get into that one. And of course, courtesy too is very important. And when I read this, I was thinking, oh, I had never really thought about it this way. God likes working with old people. Okay? Think of Abraham. There were a lot of younger people who were around, but God decided, I am going to make a great nation out of you. And this was when he was past what we would call his prime. And God still created this miracle just for him. We look at Moses, right? When Moses was 40, he thought, God, I am ready. Like, I am rearing to go. I can free your people right now. And God was like, no, you still need to grow some more. You still need to mature a bit more and learn from me a bit more. And by the time he was now what we would term an older person, right? This was 2/3 of his life. That is when God was like, it's time for you to start doing the work I need you to do. Look at Noah. How old was Noah when the flood came? Young people? How old was Noah when the flood came? Yes, Emma. 300s? Ooh. Yeah, off a bit there. He was in the hundreds. How many hundreds? 600. 600. Imagine that. Almost at the end of his life. And God is like, and the interesting thing was his kids were so young when God was like, make that ark. All right? And he saved he saved mankind at that old age. And we look at John, the beloved disciple. When he went on Patmos, he was in his old age. Like everyone around him had literally died out and he was the only one left. And God still had a purpose and a use just for him. Okay. And so there's a reading here from Reflecting Christ. It says, the history of John affords a striking illustration of the way in which God can use aged workers. When John was exiled to the Isle of Patmos, there were many who thought him to be past service, an old and broken reed, ready to fall at any time. But the Lord saw fit to use him still. Though banished from the scenes of his former labor, he did not cease to bear witness to the truth. Even in Patmos, he made friends and converts. His was a message of joy, proclaiming a risen Savior who on high was interceding for his people until he should return to take them to himself. And it was after John had grown old in the service of his Lord that he received more communications from heaven than he had received during all the former years of his life. All right, what book of the Bible did John write on Patmos? Revelation. Okay. So, God cares for and respects the elderly. I am sure all of you know the story of Elisha, right? What happened with Elisha? Young people, beware. Do not mess with old people. Okay? God loves old people. What happened to the young people who were messing with Elisha? Yes, Emma?
Two bears basically killed them all.
Okay, 2 bears came out of the woods and killed 42 of these young people. Why did the bears kill the people? Because they were insulting the man of God, right? What were they calling him? Baldy, right? Yeah, Baldy, right? So that is a badge of honor. When you go bald, it's a badge of honor. So God still wants us to respect people. He doesn't lay them aside, all right? He still expects us to treat them with love and respect, especially God's workers. We need to love and respect them. And then an interesting thing is, when we think of death, I mean, in the world that we live in, so many young people die. But back then, people who were dying were old people. So when you would see widows, you're thinking it's old people. All right, who've lived their lives with their husbands and now they've lost their husbands, widows, widowers, right? And God talks so much about how we are supposed to take care of the widows. He mentions it so many times, widows, orphans, because these are a very special people to him. And we've seen stories of him raising the lives of the children of the widows, healing them. And, the widow who put in the 2 mites, these all have special mention because these are people who are close to God's heart. And we are told in the book Daughters of God that God holds each child responsible if they neglect the care of their parents, and he notes their disregard for their parents. Okay. God takes all these things seriously. Just like he takes the broken toys seriously, he also takes the responsibilities that he has given us seriously. Okay. So think about the older people in your life, whether it's your parents, someone in your community, right? How do we treat them? Do we raise our voice in anger to them? They are slower. They are old, right? Do we want to rush them? Do we have less patience when we're dealing with them? Do we use unkind words or even names when we're dealing with them? Have you sat on a seat in the bus and let that elderly person stand? Okay? Do we seek their advice, or we think, oh, what do they know? We live in a different world, right? Do we feel they are old-fashioned and outdated in the way that they think and that they don't understand the times in which we live? Right? Remember what I said? Nothing is new under the sun. So all things more or less the same. Okay. Psalm 71 verse 9 and 18 read, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone. Even when I am old and gray, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation, your mighty acts to all who are to come." When I read that verse, it's not just about, being forsaken and all those things. I like that second last part, which says, till I declare your power to the next generation, right? So our elders, older people, you also have a great responsibility. If you are not passing on what God has shown you in his wisdom, if you're not passing on that wisdom, not passing on those skills, you are doing us younger people, I'll put myself as a younger person, a disservice. Okay? So all of us have responsibilities to each other, and we shouldn't just focus on the old people have nothing to give. They still have so much to give. So at times they may be willing, but we are not willing to listen. So we need a two-way street that opens up for them. I was reading earlier, I just bumped across something on Facebook where they were talking about the window seat generation. I'm sure you've heard about them in Japan. How older workers can still be invited to come to work. Basically, you get a window seat. You get this job where you're basically not expected to do anything, but it's still to give you this sense of purpose and, that feeling of, I'm still capable of doing something. So even if I'm not really doing a big job in the company, the fact that I can still be there, I can still have my younger colleagues coming to talk to me and all those sort of things, it gives me a sense of purpose. And this is something that we find lacking in our society today. Most of the time, you retire, find a plan for yourself, right? We stop dealing with you, right? And I know in some cultures, if you were old, they would take you and leave you in the mountains and you deal with yourself, okay? We still have such things that happen. And yet we have the opportunity to make our older people feel like they are still useful, okay? So what can we do? As individuals, we have to ask ourselves a serious question. Are we taking care of the older people in our lives? It doesn't have to be a parent. I mean, many of us are here. We do not necessarily have our older parents with us here. But within our community, do we recognize the needs of the older people who are there? Those who've got family outside of the country, are you taking care of them? Okay? Are you living your life comfortably here and you've forgotten that, there are people back there who still need something or they need some help? Whether it's a call, it's financial, it's whatever. Okay? We need to make sure our elderly relatives are being taken care of. And then as a church, what are we doing for our elderly members? Right? Do you realize when our members are not there? Right? And I'm thinking, Mama Francis, today the number of hugs you received, you've never received that many. Okay? This is the sort of care that we need to be showing, all right? We've got grandparents in the church. We've got elderly people here in the church. And we need to show them that love so that even when they're away from their family, they still know that they have grandchildren. They've got children here who still love and care for them. So our older people, do we care when they're not in church? Do we care if they've got transport or not to actually come to church? Do we actually take time to visit them? Or is it only when we've got programs like this that we think, we've got visitation to do? All right? So do we take them communion? At times it's simple things like that. Right? And this is not the pastor's job. What are we doing to take this sort of burden away from just that one person and make sure as a collective we are caring for our older people? Do we make sure that even if they're in a care home, they are receiving the care they are supposed to? Because we know that some abuse does happen in these homes. So are we making sure they are getting the care they deserve? If they are still in their homes, they're older. There is so much that needs to be done, whether it's in the house or in the yard, whatever it is. Do we take that time? Because at times it's just about giving your time. It doesn't have to be financial. But do we take the time to care? And like Aunt Bessie said, all of us, we are approaching that, right? Each day you live, you are a step closer to being older. And we need to think, how would we want to be treated when we are older? How do we ensure that, we can protect those who are older? And for me, when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, disrespect, neglect of the elderly doesn't start when they're elderly. It's an attitude that starts earlier on. How do you treat your parents? How do you talk to them? How are you dealing with them? And I must say, I was very convicted. I was having a disagreement with my mom this week. And I came and I read this as I was preparing, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to go back and apologize. And so, situations like this, they remind us that, the way that we deal with our elderly people, God is watching it. Like the reading that we saw, their sons and daughters. God takes account of these things that may seem so minor. And today we are reminded, let's honor our parents. And let's remember, not just our biological parents, but all those who are elderly within our vicinity. In conclusion, Proverbs 23:22-25. Listen with respect to the father who raised you. And when your mother grows old, don't neglect her. Buy truth. Don't sell it for love or money. Buy wisdom. Buy education. Buy insight. Parents rejoice when their children turn out well. Wise children become proud parents. So make your father happy. Make your mother proud. Okay? I am hoping that all of us can sit here today and be able to say, you know what? My mother, my father, they are proud to have me as their child. Okay. And parents, you saw that there's a role. Parents rejoice when their children turn out well. We have a responsibility to treat our children in a way that will turn them out the right way. Because at times our children don't know how to respect their grandparents because they have seen what parents are doing. Okay? So we need to teach them how to do the right thing. Psalms 148 verse 12 and 13 say, both young men and maidens, old men and children, let them praise and exalt the name of the Lord, for his name alone is exalted and supreme. His glory and majesty are above the earth and heaven. Okay? Our responsibility to God never ends with age. Okay? We've seen cases where the older people get, the more they think they can act out. Right? This is a reality. You think now you can be impatient, you can be shouting, you can be doing all those things. And you've forgotten that the God who has said, be patient, be kind, be temperate, didn't say only when you're younger. Even when you are older, you need to act responsible. Okay? So all of us, we've God-given responsibilities, and no matter what age we are at, we need to do them. So God doesn't give us a pass just because we are older. And I believe this is the final slide. And it says, and afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days. Okay. Our older people, God still gives them wisdom to share with each and every one of us. And I mean, if you check online, if you look at the GC, for example, how many of our pastors that we've known since we were young, they are so old, but they are still on the pulpit because God still has a message for them to share with us. And God still appreciates, empowers, respects, and values the elderly. And I want to say, young people, if we are not prepared to do the work that God has given us to do, he will use the older people to do it for us, right? He won't sit around and wait for us. So whatever mission we have been given, let's get busy with it. Older people, never think you're too old to do the Lord's work or to be a force for change or to be a source of wisdom. God has given you all these experiences that are rich and detailed so you can share them with the younger generation. So we hope to see more of you up here doing loads of things with the younger people. Then us who are in the middle will sit and wait until we are older too. Okay. So let us take time, please, to appreciate and love those who are older among us. And I hope that God can work in us as a church also so we can take care of our older people within the church and also within our community. Thank you.